Hi, everybody. Recording in progress. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin We the Species. And I'm running on a high mode, a fast frequency mode, because this is part of the commitment I made to the Garden State Film Festival to interview actors, actresses, producers, directors, production, music as part of the Garden State Festival, which is coming up March 27th through the 30th. And I'm with Laurel Harris now, and I always search the universe for particulates of commonality and synchronicity, and Laurel's movie 47, which we're here to talk about that, about a 40 something woman dealing with infertility and childlessness and stuff, and what was the instant bonding for me is 47, movie poster. And that was my jersey number when I played basketball. Um,
Oh,
and I've had not a similar journey, but I've had a journey that encompasses some of the things that Laurel is going to talk about. So I have great feelings and empathy and understanding of emotions and things that she's acted into. So I'm so aboard, Laurel, with all of
oh.
this. I was actually really looking forward to this interview because I feel it, you
I
know?
just got chills, Calvin. Thank you so much. Because
Yeah,
not everybody has gone through this journey, obviously, but those who have, there's just a special kinship there. There's a special bonding that comes kind of almost automatically. So, yeah, when you shared that with me instantly, I was like, okay, here we go. This is meant to be.
yeah. I mean, I'm doing a little plug. There's a tortoise in my hair. There's a few chapters here devoted. It's fiction, but it got the Kirk story. But there's a few chapters devoted to that issue in my journey to become ultimately a father.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
Yeah. So, any kind of background you want to throw at us now, and just little history? I mean,
Oh,
you've done some
gosh.
great work.
Yeah, thank you. I started out as wanting to be an actor, and I did that for quite some time, and I love it. There was a time where the acting was kind of drying up, and it kind of goes in waves, and the acting was getting dry, and I needed some income. So I started doing more producing, and I found out I love that too. So it took me in all these great directions on these great journeys around the world. At one point, I feel really fortunate that I got to work with a group called Peace Jam, and we traveled around the world interviewing different Nobel Peace Laureates for part of
Yeah.
their uh,
Yeah.
series of films that they were doing on the Nobels. And that was one of the biggest turning points in my life, no question, because when you're in the room with the Holiness Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Shirin Ebadi and all of these
Yeah.
amazing individuals that are just beaming light and peace and walk their walk and talk their talk, it's life-changing. So it was on those journeys that I thought I got bit by the bug to do projects that really speak to our souls, speak to humankind. And yeah, one thing led to another, and I kept doing more producing, got back into acting as well, and juggling all of that. And it's been on my agenda for a long time to do this film. This was a passion project of mine to put myself out there in a bigger way and do something that was so near and dear to me. But at the same time, it was also a really nice catalyst for our company. So it served a really nice dual purpose there, and we're having fun. It's doing really well on the circuit. And my writing partner, Lori Clemens, who wrote 47, actually has been at Garden State. She was there last year and won Best Screenplay for her script. The Dude is Legit. It's a feature,
Yeah.
and she got to do a screen reading, a play reading of the script. So she kept saying, "You've got to submit 47 to Garden State. You've just got to do it." And I was like, "Okay." And now I know why, because everybody I've interacted with so far has just been awesome, and it led me to you. So here we are.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I love Garden State. I love it for so many different reasons because I've been there for so many years as a journalist, and I got so friendly with Diane, the founder, and
Yeah.
Lauren, and uh, I've been to so many of these. I haven't gone for the last couple of years, bad knee. I got a chance to
Mm,
talk to Armand Desante, which was a highlight for me because he did Private Benjamin, and
right.
within
Yeah.
he probably was in one of the most famous scenes in my book when
Yeah.
he meets Goldie Hawn in the bar and pop 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 and I told him that and I said you're such a hero for me. But anyway, back to
Yeah.
work. Back to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you kind of touched on how 47 came to be. It was time,
Right.
and just kind of said
Yeah.
that. Why do this story now about this?
Well, I'll back up a little bit by saying it wasn't intentional that this film was going to come out at such a poignant time in history, given the elections this year with Trump and the JD Vance coming out and saying so much about childless women. And, there was all this hubbub that was surrounding this topic. And that certainly wasn't intentionable. I can't speak. Uh, but whatever you want to call it, divine intervention, it happened at that time. And so, yeah, it's given us a little bit more momentum and really struck a chord with a lot of folks. As I said, for me personally, it came down to I just had to do it. It's one of those times where you're like, I can't hear this voice go on and on in my head anymore. I have to do this. And it just felt right. And also, a little selfishly, Dan Lauria, who's in it, he's most known as being the dad on the Wonder Years. He and I had been talking about working together for quite some time. And I kept coming to him with ideas, and he kept saying, no, no, no. He can be kind of gruff, but he's got a heart of gold, and he's just an awesome guy. And he kept saying no. And then I came back with this script, and he was like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. And so I wanted to get that done because juggling his schedule and ours and the timing of it all, I didn't want to wait too long. So,
Was there a
yeah.
particular point you wanted to go from the things you were doing to get into filmmaking? How did you cross into that?
Yeah, being a filmmaker and being in front of the camera for this, it's a lot, as
That's
anybody
hard.
knows who's done it. Yeah, it's a lot. I hadn't done it that way before, and so it was a wake-up call for me, and I have so much more respect now for everybody who does. I mean, even doing a feature, oh my goodness, it's a lot. Um, but yeah, it takes a whole nother set of skills. It takes a whole nother set of time and commitment to it. And so the director, Jeremy Fletcher, and I had been working on this for quite some time, going back and forth. And of course, Laurie and I had gone through script rewrites for years, literally. I mean, just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. We originally thought, do we make this a feature? Do we make it a short? Do we make it a series? Is it, what is this? And ultimately, we felt like we could make the most impact with a short, just keep it short and sweet. And what we didn't anticipate, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, is that it resonated so well with so many folks that we've gotten interest in Hollywood and Los Angeles. It's being shopped around right now as a potential calling card for a feature or a series. So, proof of concept. It's who knows where it'll go, but I didn't go into it with that intention. That just became an added bonus, and
That's
I'm
a
super
hell of a
grateful.
bonus. Wow.
Yeah,
Listen, the subject matter, uh, I think there are legions of people who feel and or have been part of that journey, but
yeah,
it's kind of like hunger. Your next door neighbor could be hungry, but you'll never know it because
yes,
they don't
yeah, yeah,
ask for help
yeah.
and they don't go to a food pantry. So your next door neighbor could be, having gone through all these things and you never know it. So this
Yeah,
brings it a little bit, and I think, by the way, I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing because
thank you.
it bonds, it'll help people feel and see and maybe kind of move them along. It's so important because we've got, listen, we've got a lot of issues that way, and it ain't going to get better. And I think the world over has issues, and some of these things are tied into environmental things, and we've got
Absolutely. Yeah.
microplastics in breast milk, and God knows where else this stuff is popping up, and how it's going to affect reproduction and stuff. And so,
Oh, yeah. I was just, in fact, We were in Austin last month for another screening, and I ran into Greg Braden. I don't know if that name means anything
Yeah,
to,
it does.
but yeah, he's got another book that just came out, and he was talking about how it's not so far down the future road that we're going to be really struggling with infertility in this world as a whole. I
Correct.
thought it had more to do with socioeconomics, and he's saying no, it's worldwide.
It's
It's a global issue. The other thing that we really wanted to get across in this film is there's infertility, and that's a whole big world in and of itself, and there's so much to address, like we're saying. But then the other side of it is childlessness by choice, which to me in our film narrowed down to women over 40, particular, is what we focused on, who maybe at one point along their way chose not to have children. And what kind of stigmas have they had to face? What kind of, I don't want to say abuse, but what kind of feedback from society have they continually gotten for having done that?
yeah,
And that too, to your point, is really brushed under the rug. Not too many people talk about it. So to back up a little bit, that's how this whole story came about because I had gone to my OBGYN for a regular appointment and one thing led to another and she looked at me and she said, "Well, you're not going to have kids, right?"
said
And
that.
it was like a bomb dropped. I was just so floored. And so another long story short, I went back to my writing partner Lori the next day because we were going to get together and or maybe it was that night, I don't remember. We had a regular scheduled meeting to write and I said I can't focus. I just, I just had this appointment and this is what happened and I can't get my mind straight. And she said, "Oh, the same thing happened to me." And I was like, "What? Are you kidding me? I mean, I've known you for how long? 10, 15 years and I've never known this about you?" So then I went to another meeting the next week where it's a group of women that I get together with, professional women. And same thing, I said, I can't focus right now because my mind is just going a mile a minute. And every single one of the women around that table raised their hand except for one and said they had all experienced something similar. And again, I was like, why are we not talking about this? And this was a group of artists and filmmakers and fellow people in the business. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm doing a film. We got to do this. We have to do this.
Well,
And to your point, that's my goal is that
mm,
my biggest wish is that people walk out of this after seeing it and say, we got to start talking about this. They start a conversation and find out, is there somebody you don't know that wants to talk about this? Or how does it affected their life? And, let's create some of the freedom around these stigmas.
that's a really noble. You never. You just you go through your life and you go through your life, but you never think about this. You never dwell about it. And yes, people who have been through the journey, are hypersensitized. But even then, I compact it and I put it away, and I'm not so much aware. But we all need an awareness. We all need that, that share
Yeah.
up in the face because this. We've got issues. There are some countries who have less than zero population growth.
Yep.
I mean, really,
Exactly.
and that stuff
Exactly.
gets swept under, and not a lot of attention is paid to it. But
Yeah.
and down the road, they're not going to be able to sustain their society. It's crazy.
It's going to
So
be a whole
you're doing a
different
great
thing.
thing, Laurel. You really
Thank
are
you.
with this.
Well,
Um,
thank you. Well, I have a question for you, actually, if I may.
yes,
I'm curious because when you and I were talking before we started recording, you were talking about your experience, and I was saying I've been so surprised and pleasantly so that more men are coming forward
yeah,
and saying, "Hey, I was affected by this." Obviously my partner couldn't conceive or we couldn't conceive, but and I supported her because it's really traumatic for her, but then I was going through this emotional roller coaster. So I love that more men are coming forward and being free to express what they're going through as well, because I think that's a whole nother film. But my question to you is, do you feel like the emotional journey that you took and your wife took were similar, or do you feel like there was more difference than similarity, or the other way around?
great question. That's a great question. I mentioned to you that my advisor said I got to extract that from here and
Yeah.
deal with it in a memoir. This is fiction, but it's not fiction, but it's fiction. But in talking to my wife and preparing her, and she's all aboard to do this, we had we were we had different views of the world, and we were different in our thinking and everything about it. And I don't know if it was chromosomal, the difference. I don't know
Right.
if it was uh, societal. I mean, I don't know. I just had a different view of the whole thing. I just needed to be a father, and I
Yeah.
explored that. So I think I listen, and gender, she's got different things, and the maternal instinct, and so we were completely different. And in some ways, in some ways, was taking more of a female point of view. Uh,
Mm.
that makes sense, and
Yeah, totally.
I want that had that instinct to parent. Um,
Yeah.
it was a massive emotion and a massive confusion that we had to deal with. Tough times. I mean, tough
Yeah.
tough times.
Yeah, it's not easy. And again, I'm grateful that you had each other.
Yeah,
You know, I think the more people we can surround ourselves with that are sympathetic or empathetic and can understand and listen, the better.
yeah.
'Cause it's,
And taking what you said again, I hold this up. I listen. Everybody who knows me knows that this is pretty much my journey. I was not in the least bit. Uh, I exposed myself here, and it's funny. Um,
right.
the woman who I'm working with, Kay Wagner, she's just a brilliant book marketer and a best-selling author in her own right. She read this a couple of weeks ago, and on the review on Amazon, she calls me brutally honest. So I was brutally honest, and all the feelings I
Yeah.
had about everything about that stuff came
Right.
out. I didn't hold anything back. Of course, anybody who knows me is going to say, "Well, that's Calvin." Uh, So I wanted to share it because I felt just like you. I felt I had a responsibility to share it and tell people. I mean, I didn't look at the big picture that maybe I could help people that way, but I wanted to share it and be honest. It was a time for honesty, I guess.
I totally respect and appreciate that because I think this journey, and again, whether it's infertility or childlessness by choice and dealing with the stigmas, I think both, there's nothing that quite compares. You know, it goes to a different level of our psyche and our soul, in my opinion, and it forces us to be honest. It forces us to look at ourselves in a different way because somehow I think we're wired to assume that we're going to be a parent or assume that we're going to rear children. And whether or not we choose that or we can't, it's like a disconnect, something, it's like a glitch in the system. And that's how I describe it. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, who am I? What am I? Am I broken? Am I wrong? Am I going to be somehow blacklisted from society? I mean, not that we would necessarily, although there are some places in the world that would do that still, but there is that psychological fear, I think, on some deep level. And so it's that in and of itself is a sort of stigma.
Yeah,
That in and of itself can create isolation or loneliness or depression and a feeling that no one else gets this at all. And it is different for men and women. So
yeah, it is.
kudos to you. Yeah, it's a big journey.
Big journey, and going through our process, all our friends, having kids, uh,
Yes.
and we're not, and it affects us, so many different levels that affects us. We don't go to the
Yeah.
movies, we go out to eat with our friends a lot because, she has a belly but I mean, so
Yeah.
cycle it's on so many levels. The whole
You're so
it,
right.
it was a rough time. And
Yeah.
and then my wife bravely, interesting. I'm thinking about it now, talking to you, Laurel. But my wife, said, "Hey, if this doesn't work, hey, I'm just happy, me and you.
Yeah.
I'm happy, me and you." And
Right.
and I wasn't as happy about that.
Right. Because you had a
Sometimes,
calling in your soul. You had a calling
yeah,
that you
oh,
knew.
I did,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
call, and I explore that too, because at 10 years old, I used to sit on this jetty. 10 years old, I was a kid. What the hell do I know?
Right.
10 years old, I
Right.
would sit on this jetty and look out on the ocean and dream and see ships, sailing on the horizon. And
Yeah.
and I don't know where it came from, and I do have recollections of it, but I used to dream, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I was a daddy someday and I brought my kid here to look
Oh
at.
my gosh.
So I
At 10
started
years old.
to ponder that
Yeah.
scenario at 10 years old. And throughout my book, I explored, do I need to go see a psychiatrist? Well, I'm a young kid and I'm not worried about the, Los Angeles Dodgers or the Boston Celtics. And I'm
Right.
thinking about being a father. There's something wrong with me. So this stuff is,
Yeah.
well, it's deep. It's deep,
It's
for me,
so deep.
deep stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't go away. It's like it's not something you can put in a closet necessarily and never deal with again because every holiday, every family get together, every time, like you said, I can remember all the times going to get together with friends and they'd all bring their kids, and sooner or later it was like, you know what? I need a different group of friends too, so that I can feel like I've got some people that understand this.
Yeah.
And just today, all these years later, I went to an OBGYN appointment today, ironically. And it was a new doc I hadn't seen before. And she asked me on the way out, so do you have kids? How old are they? And it
Well,
was like, nope, I don't, and I could just tell there was this moment.
well,
It's like, it just is ingrained in us. I think
yeah.
that's
Oh, it's such a, it is, and we're never going to get rid of that.
no,
But no, that's just, it's in the air that we breathe. That's,
yeah, so hopefully we raise some sensitivity around it,
yeah,
that
and
people
it's
are
a
conscious.
process, and you started that. It's such a 47 is such a solid process to of awareness.
Let's hope, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
truly.
little ripple in the pond, but every ripple counts.
Everything, hey, listen, it's all a process. It all helps.
Yeah,
And the more people are exposed, when I worked for this multi-billionaire, 30 billion, brilliant man, and the son, brilliant. One of the things I took away, somebody said it, I don't even remember who the hell said it, but this area between the two earlobes, that
yep,
area, stuff goes in and comes out. And,
yep,
and, and he said roughly 6, 7, 8 times something has to go through one ear, and maybe on the eighth or ninth passage. It's kind of
yeah,
the eighth or ninth passage, it gets stuck. It gets remembered and becomes part of us. But it's
right.
8 or 9 trips through here to make a difference.
Sometimes it feels like 89 for me, but yeah,
Maybe,
let's
maybe,
do it.
maybe, maybe. Um, I want to go off topic, just a brief
Yeah.
second. I have one of my favorite journalists who I love dearly, Barbara Walters. Uh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
plagiarizing. I sometimes plagiarize Barbara, and I think that's a good thing.
yeah.
But anyway, she asked a great question, and I always ask it, and
Okay.
it's now mine.
If it's a
So
Barbara Walters question, we got to ask it
yes, I
because
got to ask, and it's kind of cute.
we,
And so anyway, Laurel, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
ooh,
Yeah,
alive or dead?
you can
Either
do
one?
a few if you want. It's fine. There's no rule.
Oh man, I love this question. Well, my mother has passed, so I'd love to have a day with her,
But,
obviously, because my mom and I were close. But you know who I really would love to spend some time with? I'd love to go back because I was a dancer and have a dance lesson with Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire. I think
wow.
Fred Astaire would be a little rough for me. He'd probably critique
Wow.
my dancing. Well, Gene Kelly would too.
Oh,
But yeah, I used to watch those movies with them over and over and over again. I mean, I can never watch enough Singing in the Rain.
that was my
So,
first movie.
was it really?
It
No
was
way.
I just said this the other night to a friend of mine. We were talking. My very first movie, I think, was 51 or 52. Was Singing in the Rain. And I remember my parents taking me to see that. That was my first movie. So every
Oh
once in
my
a while, when it's
gosh.
on TCM, I watch it.
You and I are connected, my friend. I don't know what's going on, but that's awesome.
It's great. It's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
my
so
first movie. Man, do I love that that raining, that's when he's singing
Oh,
rain. Oh, what a scene.
it's brilliant. Yeah, it's just so good. And I think back to when they were making those movies. I mean, that was obviously all film, and you had one shot to get it right because film was so expensive. They didn't do it in one shot often, but sometimes they did. And they had to be at the top of their game all the time because you couldn't do a lot of takes like we do
Oh,
now.
that's right.
So, yeah, a whole different level of mastery. Uh, I mean, now that we're on the topic, I wasn't thinking of this, but the other person I would love to meet, a couple people who are at the top of my list as actors are Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis,
No, I
because
met
I
her.
saw,
I met Meryl.
oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was
I
in a
love
movie
that
with her.
story.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was one of the great moments of
Oh,
my life to have met her. And the synchronicity goes off camera, I can tell you. It goes on long beyond that because the house where they filmed that movie, One True Thing, uh,
yeah.
it turns out I became friendly with the Rutgers professor who rented the house to Universal for 6 months. And Meryl used to love that house, and sometimes she would come
Huh.
living in Connecticut. She'd come and she'd sleep in the house, and the stories that I was told.
Yeah.
So yes, um, that was
She's
great to have met her. Yeah.
she's the ultimate. Yeah. Yeah, I still have it on my wishing board that someday I get to meet her and work with her somehow. So we'll see. I
Yep.
know she's doing less and less, but
Sure.
put it out there.
Yep.
Daniel Day-Lewis, I saw him in My Left Foot, and the first thing I said was, where'd they find a guy who had those disabilities that could act like that? I mean, where?
Yeah.
Come to find out, I didn't know who he was at the time. I was like, oh, oh, yeah, he's that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, those would be a few.
Okay. All right. Back to work.
Okay.
Where the future for 47? Where can people? Always like to kind of hold us up. By the way, that's a great picture because it's about as sad and pondering. I stared at it a few times. There's a great sadness, and you can almost see tears in an eye, and it's a great picture.
Oh, I appreciate that. We debated over it because posters are everything, right? I mean, you get one chance to show people something and get them excited, and it's not as easy to get people excited with a really teary, scary person. So, going through some scary emotions. But again, I just have to trust that folks that know anything about the topics, they'll get it. So, to answer your question, where can they see it? We will be at the Garden State Film Festival this weekend, or next weekend, excuse me, obviously. So we're in the TA 12 block, which is from 6 to 8:15 p.m. at Asbury Hall on Saturday, March 29th.
Mhm.
So please come out if you do and say hi. I'd love to talk to anybody that has heard this. TA 12 block, Asbury Hall, Saturday the 29th at 6 o'clock. And then after this, so we're obligated to do the festival run for a little bit longer. I say that playfully because we're having a great time. But then after we're done with the festival run, we're looking into places where we can put it online. But folks can follow us at 47themovie.com. That's our website, or on our socials, and yeah, figure out where we're going to be next and see if we can get some more festivals rocking and rolling through the rest of this year.
Great, 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 great. I'm kind of pondering this. There's two sides of an argument. I'm telling a personal story. Uh, One is you're close. You live the experience, and the other side, you can be I mean, it's a fine balance. Uh,
Yeah,
it's a fine balance, and you're doing that. And
yeah, it's a great question. I think what was a different experience for me, as I mentioned, this time being in front of the camera and behind the camera in this capacity, I was in character, and yet the character was based on me. So there was almost instead of a two-sided coin, there was a three-sided coin, if you will, because I was the character, which was also me, but then also running the show behind the thing and going between those three
oh,
different shades of gray, if you will. Um, yeah, it just takes a whole different level of concentration. It's thrilling, and I found myself absolutely exhilarated, and then I'd go home and just crash because it took so much energy. And yeah, we get up and we do it again and again. And yeah, constantly having to really change that hat distinctly so that I wasn't bringing anything from the character behind the scenes to say, okay, let me look at this with an objective eye so I can see is this scene working, or how do we adjust this other character that I'm working with. But then I did find there were times where I would get lost in the minutia of it. Not proud to admit it, but it happened. And I'd have to pull Lori, my writing partner, aside and be like, "Hey, I'm lost here. Like I'm not. I know where I need to go. I know where my destination is, but I'm not getting there. So what am I doing wrong? You know?" And she'd kind of coach me through it and say, "Try this, try that," or bring up things that we had talked about, which was great to kind of put me on course, put me back on course. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, that's
it's an awesome experience.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just
to
different.
wear all those hats. I mean,
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, it's not just the director actor role, but an acting role that's so close to me.
yeah,
So it's a little different. Yeah.
yeah, and it's intense. It really is intense. Um,
Right.
I saw that 3 out of the 4 people in your cast are up for best acting.
Yeah. How cool is
Great.
that?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that at all, and I'm blown away and so grateful. Yeah. So Dan, who I mentioned, Dan Loria, who's look him up on IMDb. His credits and resume are as long as, a mile. He's, like I said, he's mostly known as the dad on the Wonder Years, the original TV series, but he's got a ton of Broadway credits off Broadway. In fact, as we speak, he's in Dublin doing a play that he wrote.
Wow.
Um, he's up for Best Actor. I'm up for Best Actress. And then one of our other castmates is up for Best Supporting Actress, Diane Robin, and she's got a great list of credits from RoboCop to NCIS and all kinds of things. Iris Almario is our other castmate who I wish could be nominated as well. She just knocks her role out of the park. And great actress from The Walking Dead, Tales from the Walking Dead, and Jane the Virgin, all kinds of things too. So it was really an honor to work with this team because it was so seamless. They all came with their A game, and I felt like I just had to show up and keep my head above water and swim as fast as they did because they brought it, they rocked it. Yeah.
Um, as we kind of wind down, is there a particular tip you want to give to people, film-loving people, who want to take similar roads? Um,
Well, at first I thought you were going to say to anybody who loves film, and I think that this may sound really trite, go see films in theaters. That's what I want to encourage people to do. I know that sounds a little crazy, but we need to keep our theaters alive. And we're entering a new era where that could be really questioned, whether or not
yeah.
they're going to
I
stay
worry
open
about
or
that.
not.
I really
Yeah,
do.
I do too. I
I
really do.
truly worry about that.
Yeah.
It's almost like that movie coming to life. I just thought of this. One of my favorite movies, The Last Picture Show.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, there's, you know, it's coming. We're losing malls, we're losing we're losing our way
Yeah.
of life is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
AI is going to change us. So, but that was a two-pronged question.
Well, and to your point, we don't recognize yet what will happen if we continue to lose our movie theaters, because that ripple effect is going to change movie making. It's going to change the way films are made, the ones that do get made, the ones that are greenlit. It's going to rapidly change the entire environment. So that's why I want to say, go support theaters because that's also the heartbeat of our communities too,
Right.
obviously. And I was talking with another fellow filmmaker who's going to be, his film is at Garden State this year too. And we were talking about, he was just on a panel at another festival and they were discussing the future of theaters. And he said, as filmmakers, we get it. When we see our films on an iPad or a phone, God forbid, it's just not the same experience as when you're in a theater. And yes or no, if you want to sit with a bunch of people eating popcorn, but there's a different experience that's visceral. And the film shows differently. We see different nuances in the color and this, and we hear things in the sound, and it's a different experience. And as filmmakers, we get a little passion. I get a little passionate because that's what we made this film for, was to be seen on a big screen. And when you see it on a little device in your hand, it's not going to have the same impact.
No, it won't.
So,
It won't. It's I mean, my whole life revolves around movies and film and the experience
Yeah, you
I've
get
had.
it.
And listen, my whole life revolves around film, period. And my
Right.
great love I have. So it scares me that is going through some changes like that. It's
Well,
crazy.
it also affects our film festivals, obviously. I mean, there a lot of them are still struggling from COVID still, and
Yeah,
everything's changed since then. So, in order to keep those numbers up and keep our festivals and keep that opportunity for people to learn and grow and experience things together and have conversations, that's what this is about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just to backtrack,
Yeah.
thinking just one quick backtrack question. Um, infertility is a much more common subject in general, whether it's conversation or media, whatever. Childlessness, not as much, but they're two powerful things. But you chose to talk about them both, and by the way, that's kind of brave.
Or crazy, or
Yeah,
both.
well, being brave can be crazy.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, like I said before, it was really tough going into this because it was a conversation that we had over and over, this is such a broad topic, two topics. How do we narrow it down? And then originally our script was about 30 minutes, and we had some sage advice from some people in the industry saying, get it down to 15 and you'll do that much better. You'll have that many more opportunities. So it was convincing enough that we decided to do it, but I got to tell you, taking half of a short film, cutting a short film in half is a lot. So we don't get to explore those topics as much as I'd like. I think we do a good job, and I know I'm biased, but I think we do a pretty good job, again, opening it up for conversation. But if I had my druthers, I'd go back and do more around the topic of childlessness by choice because for my story, I'll base it off of me. I grew up in a home where my mother was a bra burning feminist, who really said you can do anything. And I love that. I followed that advice for a long time. And so I was dead set on making my career the best it could be by the time I was 30. And then there came this wake up call of, oh, if I want to do that and I want to have kids and I want to have a family and I want to have, the whole thing, is that possible? Especially if you're not from great economic means, and I wasn't. So, yeah, we do our best to touch on it, and there's other people that choose not to have children and they never regret it and they move through life and they're fine with that decision. And yet I still hear them come back and say, yeah, but I deal with the stigmas. Like I was saying earlier, I go to the doctor and they say, well, how come you haven't had kids? Or why don't you have kids? And, we're sitting around a party and people will ask. And then as soon as you say, I don't have them, there's kind of this awkwardness. And then the conversation turns.
Yeah,
Whereas if you say you have kids, people automatically jump in and say, well, tell me about them. How
yeah.
old are they? Where do they go to school? Blah, blah, blah. But if you don't, it's just automatic dead end and crickets. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the great mendacities. I'm thinking of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof. One of the great mendacities. Oh, you have kids? And I explore that in my novels. I went to a high school reunion, and the first thing somebody said, "How are you? What have you been doing for 40 years?" And blah, blah, blah. Oh, do you have any kids? That
Yeah.
seriously, and I wrote that in my novel because it
Yeah.
annoyed me.
Absolutely.
Did you run for governor? Did you get a
Right.
law passed? No, but ask me something substantively. Do you believe in
Yeah.
climate change? But do you have any kids?
What are you passionate about? What are you doing to create more good in the world? Any of
Yeah,
those things.
but do you have any
But
kids?
yeah, there's an automatic assumption, oh, you didn't have kids.
Yeah.
Somehow that's a negative strike against you.
Right. So
Maybe, yeah.
it's like I want to yell, "Hey, Big Daddy, I need you. Come back. Hey, Big Daddy,
Right.
come back."
Yeah.
One last question, uh,
Yeah.
off topic, but not. Real quick, because you're an indie. Um,
Yeah.
You're an indie. I'm an indie author. You're an indie film.
Yeah.
I watched Academy Awards, and I had this great, wonderful, warm epiphany that overcame me when I saw an indie film winning everything, basically. So I thought of a
Yeah.
writer, Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, and my takeaway from that experience, seeing that, realizing that, that was an indie film and it won everything basically.
Mhm.
And the budget in the scheme of things was 6 mil, not
Yeah.
much. And I bet everybody was
God.
working, at scale and stuff.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
an indie person, how do you feel about that? Does it brighten your future, Laurel?
That's a great question. Yes, the short answer is yes. And a lot of the folks that I've been talking to have said the same thing. The bigger answer to that is he, I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. This is his third major feature so
Yeah.
that's, built on some track record that's pretty outstanding. Nonetheless, it's still an indie project. Nonetheless, we still need to get more independent films out there, and it's still hard. It's still an uphill battle.
Okay.
And it's the distribution, it's the mass consumption of material these days, it's oversaturation of people trying to get in, get their projects sold. There's so many elements to this. So I do sound a little jaded. I do sound a little negative. The bottom line is I feel powerful about it. I feel positive about it. I think it's exciting. Um, I've been doing this long enough to know that back in the day, we never would have thought that would happen. That was just so far-fetched. So it is exciting. And at the same time, as an example of the market being more saturated, I joke about this all the time, but when my partner and I were doing the festival circuit 30 years ago, 20 years ago even, it was so different. You could basically call up any festival, and I'm joking, half joking, and say, "Hey, we've got this film, we want to come bring it." And they'd be like, "Sure, bring it on." And now it's become this whole game. It's just gotten more and more so over the years, obviously. But the competition is so much more thick because anybody can grab their phone and go do a movie. You know, 6 millions by today's standards, that's actually not too bad.
Yeah,
And what they did with it is pretty outstanding. I mean,
correct.
the production quality and the value is outstanding, and 6 mil is amazing.
Yeah.
So huge congrats to them. And it's just going to the competition's going to become even more thick now. So, it comes down to great storytelling.
That's
Who
it.
has
Story,
a
story,
great
story.
story? Yep. Have to have a great story, and you have to tell it beautifully. You have to execute on every level of the top standards, and the cream will rise to the top.
Yep, yep, yep.
So,
And I urge folks to see 47.
oh, thank you.
I want to get there myself. I'm 20 minutes away. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Calvin. And
For
I hope I get to see you in person there.
yeah,
That would
for
be great.
everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Uh, I welcome you to come back. I'm here
Sure.
in new projects. Come back here. We can
Yeah.
do panels, anything. Just put me to work. Uh,
Awesome. Thank you.
Thrilled. And again, we've got some great elements and filaments of synchronicity and stuff here, and that's good. So we'll leave it
Yeah.
to the universe. I wish you only good things. I'm gonna stop recording. Don't leave. We're gonna do a 2 minute wrap and get you out of here before 10.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
great.
Thank you, Laurel.
Thank you, Calvin.